Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. You're watching Open-Minded Reflections. This is a discussion amongst our leadership team where we just sort of talk about the things that we've encountered in the last week or month or however much time has gone by since the last podcast. So I'm here with the whole Open-Minded leadership team. I have High Priest Ogenslav, High Priest Allensven, and High Priestess Fire Rose. Does someone in particular want to go first and share with us anything that you've been reflecting on the last few weeks?
So I just want to send love and light and blessings to all the people out there who are dealing with sicknesses in their families and in their households. It's been a tough year. My kids have been sick probably 4 or 5 times, and I've had to take them out of school just for sick days. And I even got a letter from the school saying, watch the attendance. You're getting a little too many sick days there. You know, it's just really tough.
That's insane. How could you possibly control the number of sick days your child needs?
You really can't. And I don't appreciate it being a parent when other parents send their sick kids to school and then mine get sick and it's just this back and forth. So yeah, he missed 3 days and I found out it was influenza actually. There were 7 or 8 kids out of his class that were all gone the same day last week.
He's out of school for only 3 days and the school is already hounding you about it. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, he had been sick a couple other times earlier in the year. So as soon as school started, it was September. You know, everybody had been out for the summer and fresh air, and then you put them all back in the classroom and boom, everybody got sick. So it was a couple of times, September and then, you know, the next month.
I mean, but still, how long do they think, like, if a child gets sick 2-3 times in a year, then yeah, they're going to miss 2 or 3 days each time. Like, how long do they think it's going to take someone to recover from a severe illness? Like, obviously, if someone gets sick 3 times in a year, they're going to be out 3 times for like 2 or 3 days each time. And there's nothing you can do to control that. So
no, and it would help if we could let them actually recover and rest. Give them a whole week off, you know, and it's hard with working families too. My husband and I both work full time and we have to figure out, okay, who's going to stay home? I don't get paid if I don't go to work. My husband has better benefits than I do, but if he stays home, then he loses his overtime. So it's just, you know, it is what it is. It's just part of life in America, really, that we don't have family around to help us. We have to pay $100 a day in daycare if we want to send the kids to daycare. If we want to stay home, I tried that for a while, or I just stay home and watch other people's kids. It's frowned upon because I don't have my license. It's not legal. And, you know, then there goes my career.
Yeah, the American dream, huh? As a full-time homemaker myself, I also just understand the problem with just the stress of having to take care of your kids and making sure that they're adequately taken care of when you're also having to juggle a million things in your hands.
It's a cultural dilemma that we have, and I wish that this country could figure it out. Because it's tough. I talk to other moms and working parents too, and they go through the same thing.
yeah, hopefully he doesn't have any more major illnesses this year and you don't have to go to war with the school board about things that are just common sense.
Yeah, it's hard. But thank goodness he's doing better. And, you know, until the next round, until something else comes through. Right. How's everybody doing on your end?
Everybody's good here. You know, we're just in that phase where Volya is trying to push every single boundary, and I don't know if it's a boy thing or if it's a Volya thing. It's just in his stars. But Gallo was never this insistent. When she did the wrong thing and we yelled at her, she would get very upset, she would cry, and then she would stop doing that thing, at least for a while, like until she forgot about it, you know what I mean? But Volya, you'll say, don't do this thing, and he'll, like, continue to do it. And you can literally be yelling angrily at him, you know, like with menace in your tone because you're purposefully trying to get him to stop without having to physically pick him up and take him away, because that doesn't actually teach him discipline, without having to, you know, obviously hurt him in some way. So, like, what can you do besides just use a menacing tone and be like, this is not okay? And the things that he's doing are not just, this is a nuisance, okay? He's trying to take the lid off of the turtle tank, and if he successfully pushes it far enough, it'll fall. The light bulb inside of the heat lamp that's attached to the lid could break if he does that and we don't notice. The cats could try to get the turtle. So it's like he can't do this thing, right? Like, especially if we're in the kitchen washing dishes and he's just sitting on the couch drinking his bottle, playing with his toys. He's old enough where we're no longer just keeping an eye on him all the time. So then we leave, and then he's quietly trying to do this thing that he knows he's not supposed to do. You could come in the room, yell at him, stop, doesn't stop. Okay, he will like actively try harder if you try to take him away. You'll move him into the other room, distract him with something else. He'll wait until you think it's all better and then come back in here and keep doing it. I have never met a more persistent troublemaker in my entire life. And he's just been like this the whole time since he was born. He's been like this. He's so like willful, and he knows what he wants and he has to get his way. And it's so remarkable to me because I'm not even sure that his ego is fully formed. And I think that he just had like a very strong imprint from his past lives. Like, I don't know, Volya was born almost like too old. Like, he was old. Like, I remember distinctly thinking when he was a newborn, looking at him, you know, not like a newborn, but a few weeks after we brought him home because he was premature. So we brought him home almost 3 weeks after he was born. And I remember looking at him and thinking that this was not a baby. That's why we call him our little mister, because he was never a baby. He was always just a little man. He was always a man in a tiny baby body. He was just like, felt like he should have more control over his limbs than he does. Felt like he should be able to move. And he's very frustrated by the nature of his form being so limited and having to like sort of start over. And it's like so weird to me because he doesn't really have an ego yet. Like, his sense of self, his identity is still kind of forming. But he still has this like willful determination to do things, even though he doesn't really have a reason for wanting to do them other than he was doing it and we told him not to. It's so bizarre to me to see that. And I think that maybe it just comes from a past life, you know, being something that was still very vivid to him, almost like he was taken from a past life suddenly and shoved into this life or something. I don't know. But I've never met a child that just, I mean, Ogun, you spend the most time with Volya. Talk about it. He just is completely out of control right now.
Yeah, he's just constantly getting in trouble. You put him down and tell him not to do something, and then he'll look at you and smile while doing the exact same thing that you just told him not to do. And then
yeah, he's smiling.
You'll try to discipline him, and the entire time he'll just laugh and smile at you like it's some kind of game, even though you're like trying to like figure out ways to like show him that what he's doing is wrong, but he just doesn't see anything as wrong.
I don't know. Is this normal? Do you guys have any framework by which to? I mean, Firos, you've got a boy.
I do, and they're so different. My daughter, she was a little bit of a handful when she was real little, but now she's really good and sweet and helpful at school and gets these. Everybody likes her. She's friendly, makes friends easily. Great remarks from the teacher. And now I've got my son in school, and he is the opposite. The first year of kindergarten, I got notes from the teacher. He got in trouble for climbing a tree, which, you know, we let him climb trees at home. And then when he's told he can't do it at school, then he gets in trouble at school, and that's confusing. But we took him to a field trip. Well, I guess he went on a field trip to the same place, but we also went as a family. It was this Cave of the Mounds where you go underground, and they take you on the tour, and they say, please don't touch the walls because there's this iridescent substance that can come off, and it kind of glows in the dark, and don't touch the walls. And as they're telling him not to touch the walls, he's touching the walls, you know, and we're like, you know, and the more you get mad, it doesn't help to get mad. So I'm thinking, all right, shouting and yelling doesn't help. Sitting him down and explaining the significance of the consequences doesn't seem to help. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the male chromosome or if it's just personality.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Is like, is it a boy thing, or is it just like my son is like a little demon? Because he also walks around like growling and stuff, but when he's happy, I mean, like like that kind of thing. But also he's basically raised by dogs. I mean, maybe that's explained by that.
So that reminds me, speaking of demons, this happened in my house. My kids were watching some show called Gravity Falls. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I have not heard of it.
I vaguely heard of it.
Okay, well, they were asking me about summoning a demon. What are you guys talking about? They drew this picture on a piece of paper that was some character from this show, and they were talking about trying to summon this demon. So then we had to banish the demon. We had to burn the piece of paper that he drew it all on. He was having nightmares. So we had to banish this demon. First time I'd ever had to do that before. So my 7-year-old is summoning demons. What is happening?
Wait, so what is this show that he was watching that made him think that he should do this?
It was called Gravity Falls, and there's some sort of demon that comes into the town. It's this triangle-shaped character with this hat on, and the kids thought that they would try to do that at home. So they were like basically summoning a demon. And I think, they thought it was pretend, but the way that they did it, and they're children, and they're so pure and so powerful and so magical, I think they did it. They summoned something. And then he was having nightmares. And
wait, so can we talk about the show? Because I've never heard of it. So
it's I'm looking up
a Disney kids show.
Yeah, I'm looking on Google right now. It's an animated Disney kids show.
Maybe we should watch a clip of it and react to it. People love reactions.
That would be hilarious.
I don't know what the heck. I don't have the patience to sit and watch kids show. I can't sit there for more than 5 minutes. I can't sit still that long.
Wait, for kid shows or for any show?
Just kids shows. I tune out. I can't sit still that long.
Why don't you like kid shows? I love them.
But anyway, so then they get these books from the library. I let them order some books because they liked the show. So they got a book on it also. And so then they're reading about it. And it says in the book, how to summon a demon. And if you do this, if strange things start happening, if plates start flying across the room. And
okay, I found this. I found a fan page. Wait, look at this. Gravity Falls fandom, Bill Cipher. That's his name. Okay, he's triangle shaped. I'll show a picture and maybe we'll do a reaction to a clip here in a minute if we can find a clip. Can you look for a clip of him? Okay. Bill Cipher was a triangular interdimensional demon formerly existent only in the mindscape before succeeding in gaining access to the real world. He had been running amok in Gravity Falls, Oregon, since being summoned by Stanford Pines over 30 years ago. I don't know what any of this means. And was also known for his mysterious demeanor and sadistic humor. Bill is the main antagonist of Gravity Falls, serving as the overarching antagonist in Season 1 and the main antagonist in Season 2.
Yes.
So he's a bad guy, though.
Right.
I posted a video on if you want to react to the one she's talking about, I think about summoning.
So he starts drawing these triangles. There's this Bill Cipher on all of his notebooks, and, he's coloring him, and I'm seeing these pictures of this triangle guy all over the place.
Okay, let's watch.
Yeah.
This is 2 minutes long. Let's watch this clip. Everybody watch it.
I posted it on the voice text channel, so you guys can also watch it.
I'm kind of scared of the thing. I don't know if I want to watch it. I've already banished that guy.
Okay, well, we're gonna watch it, so just mute for a second.
You think that combination's safe in your mind, Stanford? Well, we'll see what my new minion has to say about that. Triangulum, entangulum, veniforus dominus mentium, veniforus venentis amium!
Lick that elbow, lick that elbow!
Like the infinite horizon, it eludes my grasp.
I would definitely watch this.
I don't know when this came out, but it definitely gives me Adult Swim early 2000s vibe.
He froze time. Nice. He is a black hole now. Yes, a black hole. The literal void. Perfect.
Oh, Gravity Falls, it is good to be back. Name's Bill Cipher. And I take it you're some kind of living ventriloquist dummy? I'm just kidding. I know who you are, Gideon. What are you? How do you know my name? I know lots of things.
Lots of things.
Hey, look what I can do. Deer teeth. For you, kid. You're insane. Sure I am. What's your point?
Clearly, he's supposed to resemble like the Illuminati as well.
I like that the
Listen
person
to me,
who summoned
Damon!
him is
I have a job
frightened
for
of him.
you. I need you to enter the mind of Stanford Pines and steal the code to his safe.
Wait. Stan Pines. You know what, kid? You've convinced me. I'm sold. I'll help you with this, and in return, you can help me with something I've been working on. We'll work out the details later.
Deal.
Well, time to invade Stan's
Wow.
mind.
That's just stupid.
This should be fun.
Wow.
Remember, reality is an illusion.
And that's
The
how I
universe is
sold
a
my
hologram
soul to the
black
devil.
hole.
Yeah.
He's a terrible negotiator.
Kids.
I'll give you one of whatever you want.
It worked.
And suddenly he's damned to hell for eternity. Well, I like kind. I would
watch that
I would
too.
watch it with Gala.
That's pretty trippy.
I would watch that show.
Yeah, me too.
I thought that was funny. I like that the person is afraid of the thing that they summoned themselves. And then I like how he's just like, I'll give you one or whatever you want. Og and I are sitting here watching it, and I'm like, and that's how I sold my soul to the devil. This is why you have to engage with, you have to, whether you enjoy watching kid shows or not. It's a tough thing, really, for some people, I guess. I enjoy watching kid shows, so I think it's fun.
I like stuff like that.
Yeah.
You have to engage in watching popular media with your children. You have to, even shows that aren't like that don't seem so overtly inappropriate, maybe for children. Shows like, for instance, SpongeBob have adult themes buried within them because they're made by adults, and they often are teaching your kids things without them knowing. And the time when a child learns the most things that are potentially detrimental is the time when a child is sitting and trying to process something that is really inappropriate for his or her age, on their own. When they're trying to sit and process something that was designed by an older audience or for an older audience on their own, it can be difficult to make sense of things, and even things that are not that scary can seem scary. Things that are expressions of love can seem like expressions of hatred, and people can grow up developing unhealthy relationships with common tropes and themes found throughout society because they really come from the shared experience that we all have as humans, right? It comes from the collective unconscious, it comes from the part of us that is influenced by our biological reality. And this part of us, these tropes and themes are things that your children are going to relate to for their entire life. So, we watch things with Gala all the time that have demons in them. Summoning demons, summoning ghosts for positive reasons, for negative reasons, on accident, on purpose. The only thing that we don't really watch with her are things that are designed to make you feel fear and dread, because kids don't have the same coping mechanisms as adults, and it will influence their sleep, which can influence their growth and their development. So there are reasons to avoid certain feelings until they're really old enough to understand, okay, now that I have this negative feeling, I need to develop a way to cope with this negative feeling. My Little Pony comes the closest, I think, to explaining that concept in its first episode, when Pinkie Pie is like, look, you could be scared of the shadows that we're seeing around us, or you could laugh. You could laugh in the face of your own fear, right? And the truth of it is, in the show, obviously, they're not really in danger. In real life, you might really be in danger, but whether you're really in danger or not, laughing will help you. It will help you stay calm. It will help you think critically. Thinking the situation is funny will help you feel good about the situation, even though it's bad, until the situation is over. And most of the time, you'll survive. Most of the time, there's not real danger. So laughing at the situation is never going to hurt, right? Unless you're like laughing at a person who's holding a gun in your face, right? But inside you could be like, well, I guess this is what I'm doing today. I never thought I'd go out like this. And you could be feeling like that, thinking internally that it's some kind of humorous situation. And that will help you stay calm and not make some sudden mistake that then results in the person pulling the trigger, right? So there are good reasons why you should expose your children to things that make them uncomfortable or afraid, or that have some semblance of the common themes that you will find throughout the rest of society. And whether we like it or not, people who live in Hollywood often gain that level of success by practicing a path of power. And that will influence their art, and that will influence everyone who consumes their art. Okay, so you can't let your kids just watch things. Anything could be inappropriate or appropriate, as long as you treat everything you watch as some kind of learning experience. And I just suggest the parents that don't have time for that, like you said, working parents, have to be very careful about what their kids are being exposed to. And that's why I understand why parents use special views on their tablets that are just for kids, that only show certain kinds of content. Like there's filters you can use where you have to subscribe to the channel before you see any of the videos. I get why some parents do that. We, because we're always present in our children's lives, had the luxury to take what I think is a better approach, and one that we should as a society support for all children. And we're able to just sit there while she's watching, for instance, TikTok. She doesn't go on TikTok much anymore. She's already 3. And she understands that when she's on TikTok, the algorithm will show her things that she doesn't want to see. And it's up to her to decide if she wants to see it or not. So TikTok is more work for her. She prefers YouTube, because then she can just go to a channel, pick any of their videos, and know that because she trusts that channel, she can trust their videos. So already our 3-year-old has the ability to discern, where do I go and how do I consume content that is not going to make me so uncomfortable that I can't process it or form a positive relationship with those archetypes that I will see again and again throughout my life. And Ogun, actually, she was watching a video the other day. Remember that wolf video? She was watching some wolf video the other day where the wolf turns evil. And Ogun was like, "Are you sure you want to watch that?" And I was, across the room listening to her watch it the first time through, thinking, "Are you sure you want to watch this, Gal? It sounds scary." But she was like, no, I and then she clicked on it to watch it a second time, and we sat there and watched it with her, and we were like, this seems like it would be too much for a child to handle. But she knew that she could handle it, watched it, enjoyed it, wanted to do lighter, funner stuff the rest of the evening, went to bed, did not have any nightmares or any problems as a result of it. She knows what she can and can't handle, and she does like to be exposed to discomforting things, just like adults do. But the important thing is that if you're not engaging in the media with your children and helping them understand, how do I form a positive relationship with this thing that doesn't make sense to me? And that doesn't just mean sitting there watching it first and then letting them watch it. It's more difficult than that. You can't just screen it. Screenings are not enough, because you don't know which child is going to have issues relating to what archetypes in society. And it can happen because of their stars, their genetics, their experiences, even while they were in the womb from once they're born. All of these things can influence them and make them an individual, even from a young age, that will have different responses to different things. So you have to sit and watch your children watch things as they go through that 12-month mark and they really start to watch TV. You have to sit and watch them watch things and see, how do they relate to these things? And then over time, you can develop the intuition to know, okay, right now I think this is making them a little too uncomfortable. Or there are times where Ogun and I are fighting about something, and Gala is on her tablet, and she'll just kind of like almost be dissociative because she doesn't want to be with the fighting. So it gets to the point where, like, even once we're like, okay, look, we have to deal with this later, let's stop and just move on. And we've moved on, and both of us are dealing with our feelings, and we'll deal with it again later. Even once that has happened, if you try to take the tablet away, she's like, no, because it's like a crutch for her in that moment. It's so important that you take it away, even if she starts crying. And you say to her, look, I'm here for you. We're not fighting anymore. I'm here to be with you now. Let me help you deal with your feelings. You know that mommy and daddy fighting has nothing to do with you, right? Do you understand why we're fighting? And you just sit there and give her that space to then have a positive relationship with your, because you have to. We watched an episode of House the other day, and the child in the show was like, people who love each other don't fight. And I'm like, that person is being set up to never have a successful relationship. People who love each other do fight. They fight constructively. Okay? That is what a successful relationship is. And if you don't fight constructively, then maybe you're the kind of people that just really don't need to fight. That does happen. But most people have friction when you're trying to live together, form a life together. you don't always have exactly the same values, or you don't handle things exactly the same way, often because, relationships happen between men and women so we can have children, right? And having children is very stressful. Men and women are very different. It's a lot of friction.
Yeah, and I think that that's really true. And I think, my wife and I sort of say we don't fight, but we have conflict, of course, like anyone. And I think that, there's that thing of certain people saying, well, if you don't fight, then that means there's something, like that means something wrong or whatever. But I think it's just the definition of what is a fight. And, I guess I think that the truer statement would be maybe if there's no conflict, or if you're not facing the conflict, then that means something's wrong, because that means you're not being open with each other and stuff. But so many people give my wife and I the feedback that we are sort of unique and astounding in how harmonious our relationship is. And I would say the number one factor that contributes to that is that when we quote unquote fight, or when we have a conflict, it is not yelling and screaming at each other. And maybe that's fine for some couples even, I don't know. But we both try to keep in mind that the other one is trying their best. And that requires both of us to be trying our best.
That was my comment that I was about to make. That's not always the case.
Right. So that's an ingredient that needs to be there in my opinion. And then the other ingredient is keep in mind that the other person is trying their best, if you trust them and stuff, to be able to make that assumption. And if you do those two things, the fights don't feel like fights anymore. They feel like conversation. Okay, this is something where, it's a conversation that may even be difficult, but it's a conversation that leads somewhere. And hopefully by the end of that conversation, both people are getting more of what they want.
Yeah, I tell that to Hogan all the time. That, you don't have to have an emotional investment in like your performance as a partner. It's like you can sit there and think about it more like, okay, I love you and we're friends, and that love is like an unconditional thing that is separate. My emotional status for you, that is separate from my function in a relationship with you, because in our relationship, like, we're both kind of like almost employees in a sense, and we run a household together, right? It's like at least one of us has to make money and pay bills. At least one of us has to put the children to sleep at night, right? We have to, both of us, do chores and take care of the house and take care of ourselves and take care of all of our animals. And we run a wildlife refuge, so taking care of all of our animals is not a simple thing for us in particular. So, if we could think about our relationship as parents and household managers separate from our feelings for each other, and not like, okay, I'm getting a review from my partner stating that I need to do more dishes, or clean behind the sink when I do the dishes, or I'm trying to think of little examples, but whatever the case may be, I got some feedback from my partner, and instead of feeling bad about that and feeling like, okay, I'm not a good partner because I'm not doing my job well enough for my partner to feel good about it, or some kind of like emotional investment in the performance, you could just say, okay, I'm not doing as good a job as I would like to be. This is good feedback. I'll try to do better, right? And not have that emotional investment. And then the conversation about household chores and, who is supposed to pick up what, and this kind of like little frictional stuff that becomes large emotional issues. It doesn't have to be an emotional issue. It doesn't have to be something that makes you both angry with each other. It could just be like, I have a dispute with you because you're not doing this part of your job as well as I need you to, or whatever. That's a different conversation. And I think a lot of people have difficulty separating the emotional component of the relationship from like the job performance component. And I think if people thought about it more abstractly and a little bit more detached like that people would have those more constructive discussions instead of arguments. And that's coming from a person who, look, when I have feelings, you know about them. Okay. I think Fire Rose is like that too. We're both very fiery. When we feel something, we share it loudly, vehemently, and with whatever amount of tone and ferocity we feel like it. Well, actually, Fire Rose has more. You're more measured than I am, right, Fire Rose? I mean, you'll give people a piece of your mind, but you're still like nice about it, right? Or am I off?
I say things that I don't mean a lot to my partner, and then I'm like, I am such a bitch. How does he even put up with me, the things that I say, you know? But I'm very emotional and fiery at the same time, which is kind of a bad combination when it comes to arguments. Because, yeah, I speak what's on my mind and how I feel, and it all comes from a very emotional place, and I don't always think it through. And it doesn't really come from my mind. It comes more from my heart. And no filter. So yes, I struggle with that as well.
But I think that part of a relationship is really important too. I think that when you have these intense negative feelings about another person, the right thing to do is to just, in the most constructive way possible, okay, in that moment, try to just be like, look, I can't contain this anymore. I've been trying to, but I'm really upset about this. And then just go in on it. Say all the things that upset you. Just say it. Just say it, put it out there, it's done. Then you can feel better because you're like, look, I said it, this is how I feel, and now you know how I feel. And the problem comes for me because, like, I'm able to just be like, okay, this is how you feel about something. I understand that. I'm really sorry you feel that way. That was not my intention. I don't want you to feel like that. Now let's talk about the actual content of what made you so upset, right? Like, let's solve the problem separately from the feelings, you know? And other people are not as good at that as I am. And maybe it's because I have an Aquarius rising sign. It's very difficult for me to understand, like, why people repress things and lie instead of saying that they did something wrong. And, you know, someone will be like, you know, okay, I've been having these bad feelings and feeling exhausted, feeling stressed. They're keeping it in. They don't want to be a burden or something. And then they start to do dysfunctional things, say maybe drinking or spending too much money shopping or whatever, dysfunctional habits. And then eventually, like, the other person is like, hey, these dysfunctional habits are dysfunctional and you have to stop. And that's when the person who's doing the dysfunctional habits loses it because that was their coping mechanism for something that otherwise would have been overwhelming. Does that sound like something you guys have experience with? Because I am very bad at navigating that kind of relationship dynamic.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I'm not even necessarily, I don't have a lot of experience with somebody doing dysfunctional things, but just things that make me upset or things that I don't like or whatever, in a relationship. My experience is just that, because I'm somebody who I tend to hold it in, I guess. And I guess the holding it in is more about, it's harder to face that discomfort than it is to just say to myself, I'll just deal with that. That's no big deal to me. Like, I can live with that, but
I'm not following.
I guess,
I'm sorry. What are you saying? It's easier to deal with?
It's easier to deal with it's easier to deal with saying to myself, okay, this is something I can just kind of live with, you know, this, whatever the thing is that they're doing that's upsetting to me, versus the discomfort of having that hard discussion.
Right, but so I guess what I'm saying is the lower your threshold for accepting what you perceive of as being unfairness or injustice or mistreatment, you know, whatever that threshold is for saying, okay, I can live with this. Like, pretty much everyone has a threshold. The people that don't usually have some coping mechanisms or pathologies to go along with that divergency. Okay, most people have a threshold for what they can take in terms of another person being disrespectful as they perceive it, you know, treating them badly. Most people have a threshold, and it's influenced by where you're from, the nature of your family. It can be influenced by how spiritual you are. Okay, but most people have that threshold, and the lower that threshold is, the more often you are voicing your feelings to people. And
Right.
so that may be exhausting to the people around you, but it also means that you're less likely to grow resentment below the surface and then have that lash out at them later.
Absolutely.
So the threshold, the size of the threshold is proportional to the amount of genuine a person is in their relationship. The less you can take before you lose it, the more genuine you are, and the better a friend you probably are to that person. The less likely you would be to walk away or hurt them because of some condition that you just haven't foreseen yet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm not saying that keeping it in is the right way or something like that. Please don't think I'm saying that.
No, I didn't think you were saying that. I didn't
Yeah,
mean to
yeah,
say,
so-
I'm just commenting on something that just it occurred to me as you were speaking, the nature of that threshold being related to how genuine a person really is. How engaged are you in a relationship as well? Because, when you do voice your feelings at people, they could leave you. They could be like, well, that's over my threshold. I can't deal with your feelings. That could happen. And you maybe necessarily can't even fault them for that, because you're like, that's their threshold. Everyone has a threshold. Maybe that's the case. And so every time you do open up about your feelings and voice discomfort, you run the risk of losing the relationship, or not being liked as much, or not being favored as much by that person if it's like a business relationship, right? So there's kind of a balance between seeing to your own needs and seeing to your social anxiety, your fears.
Yeah, and I think that the more connected I've felt to the person I was in a relationship with, the more likely, I guess, to use your language, the lower the threshold was. So with my wife, I do feel my threshold is really low compared to past relationships where I was just feeling disconnected from them, and just so that threshold was further away. So because it's just I could tell they're not as on my team, I guess, as
Right,
I'm
that's what I was
comfortable with
trying to
in
hint
order
at,
to
is
share
that
that with them.
there's a feeling of vulnerability when you do open up about your feelings. So people that have a lower threshold are also usually more comfortable with discomfort. Sometimes they're not more comfortable with discomfort, and they just don't have a choice because of divergencies and such things. Maybe they just have to face things when they come up. And I know some people who will have experiences happen to them, and they will just experience it and feel nothing about it. And then 2 years later, they will suddenly just be so emotionally invested in that thing that happened years ago. Or it's not sudden often. It's, again, a series of small things that add up until they hit their very high threshold. And so what do people with really high thresholds do?
Yeah.
I've never been like that. I have a low threshold because I have a very high tolerance for discomfort, obviously. But most people probably, I'm divergent in that way. I think that my tolerance for discomfort is infinite. But most people's tolerance for discomfort is, so most people do this. Most people will have something happen to them, especially major things, and then not react to them in the moment. Do you have any advice or experience with processing things in that sort of delayed sort of way, you or Fire Rose?
This may be something where introversion, extroversion comes into play too, because, I mentioned that how connected you are to the person that you may or may not voice your feelings to, and how that affects, whether or not you do. I think as an introvert, I'm almost hesitant to kind of interact with other people anyway, kind of, just because I'm just in my own inner world, and I'm kind of I don't want people to wreck my focus or something, is maybe the underlying thought there or something.
So My husband is the type that will just go silent. If something's upsetting him, he'll just zip it and walk away. And that drives me crazy because I want to hash it out. I want him to get mad at me. I want him to yell at me, throw something, yell at me, tell me I'm a bitch. Tell me, that I'm completely in left field and I'm making no sense. I want that interaction and that I want him to engage, right? And he'll just walk away. And it just drives me crazy. And he's Virgo, and I don't know if that's a Virgo trait, but I'm Aries, and I've got a lot of water in my sign too. So I want to hash it out and yell and get in a fight, and nope.
Yeah. My mom's a double Virgo. Ogun, would you say that my mom is the kind of person who represses things? You have a lot of experience with repressing things. Let's talk about it.
I mean, I don't think your mom doesn't really repress things. She's just more passive aggressive about the way that I guess something's bothering her, then the way she phrases it, you won't think she's mad at you, but you can tell by the way that she's phrasing it that something's bothering her, but she just won't flat out say what's bothering
It's like she just wants you to ask her what's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But what about your parents and your childhood? Because you guys were Southern Baptist, so they're like the kings of repression.
Yeah, growing up, my parents were firm believers that the parents should never argue in front of their kids. They never hid the fact that they argued, but they never argued in front of the kids. They would like go into the bedroom behind closed doors and like argue with each other, not in front of the kids. So it's like,
So that's why you're so bad at arguing.
yeah, maybe I don't have any experience in or
My
exposure.
parents argued openly in front of us every day. So there you go. I should just be a lawyer, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if that counts as repression. It's just avoidance, maybe. I don't know.
That's what repression is.
Well, no,
I'm trying to think of how that's different.
I mean, repression is like implies denial, I feel like. Avoidance doesn't really imply denial.
It is a denial. It is a denial to avoid something because you wouldn't be avoiding it at all if it wasn't important to you. So in avoiding it, you are also admitting it's important. It's important enough to leave memory in your brain somewhere with that information in it. Then you're by avoiding it, you are allocating memory to it in your brain, right? That is like what is actually physically happening, right? In like a in a technology sense. So
But I guess what you're saying, Ogenslav, is that like you can acknowledge that it's important or a problem or whatever, and still avoid it, like put it off, rather than fully denying it's a problem. Is that kind of the distinction you were making?
Right. One's like acknowledging that the problem exists and just willfully like not caring to deal with it, and the other one is like just like implies like complete denial that it just doesn't even exist. It's not even a problem. It's not even a part of our universe, so to speak.
But what is which? I'm confused now. So which one? What are you saying what is avoidance to you?
Avoidance is the first one I was saying, where you can avoid something and still acknowledge its importance. Like when I was in high school, I was a terrible student in high school, and I acknowledged the importance of like taking tests and doing homework and stuff, but I still avoided doing it, even though I knew it was important and I should be doing it. Whereas compared to like, if I was in denial about doing homework, I would rationalize why homework's not important and why I shouldn't be doing homework and shouldn't study for tests because it's not important. Does that make sense?
It's a really good example. That does make sense. So you view it as being avoidance and denial. Those are like the categories of avoiding things. Well, what's the top term then? Okay, we were talking about repression. So how do these fit into the repression? How do these fit into a definition of repression?
I think repressing falls closer into the denial. I'm so sleep deprived and tired. We're talking about the two terms were avoidance. Right. And I think that repressing falls more into the term of denial.
Why?
Because if you're repressing it, I feel like it's part of you just doesn't want it to exist. Part of you wishes it wasn't part of your life.
I like your definitions. I'm not sure the logic follows.
Probably doesn't.
Probably doesn't. That's fair. Well, I mean, let's think about it.
Well, I think avoidance is a great word. That describes how I feel. I don't know what the definition is. I just know how I feel. When I'm ready to talk about something and I want to hash it out and I want to feel like we're communicating and he just walks away or doesn't have anything to say or says, I don't want to fight. All I know is I just end up feeling frustrated and not heard and not resolved.
A good reflection.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself fiery, but I am somebody where if I know something's wrong, I want to resolve it. And that to me is almost like I'm sort of rushing, it's like I can't stand living in that tension, sort of. So in a way, that is a different kind of avoidance, I guess.
Here, Eldon Sven, is there a official psychology counseling definition of repression? What does it mean to repress something?
I mean, I'm sure if you looked in textbooks, they'd give you all different kinds of definitions. But I would say most would agree that repression is just generally holding something back, not participating.
Here's the dictionary definition here. This is good. I like this. Repression, the action or process of suppressing a thought or desire in oneself so that it remains unconscious.
Sure, yeah. I guess another way to say that is willing something to be unconscious. Being blissfully ignorant.
Okay, but so I think that both avoiding and denying something by the example that we've been given here are repression then, right?
Yeah.
Because
it's a matter of degree, I guess.
They're a matter of degree.
With
good phrasing.
Yeah, in my mind, because you would say, like avoidance, you could say, yes, this thing's a problem, but I'm going to do it later. And, so that kind of minimizes the, we still agree it should be changed, but it minimizes the importance of how urgently it should be changed. Whereas, fully denying that it's a problem at all, you're 1 degree further from thinking it's important, right?
Well, so denying it, not only are you pushing it into your unconscious mind, but you're also trying deliberately to lose the reference to that allocation of memory.
Yeah.
What you're really doing when you deny something is a memory leak. And what the shadow self really is it's all of the memory that you've allocated for things, but then lost track of why you allocated it, and now it's just sitting there unused. Yeah. That's really what's going on. That's really what's happening. Isn't that funny? I have been doing a lot of software architecting and developing lately, and it's actually made it a lot easier to think of ways of explaining how human intelligence works. Because it's very similar.
Wow.
But different in a few very, very marked ways because humans are biological machines. So
that's really interesting. So I guess what ways in particular are notable to you?
With the computer, the amount of time it's going to take before some piece of hardware becomes faulty and stops functioning is minimal. So you don't have to really consider, elasticity and preserving the health of any particular node in the processing system when you design a mechanical computer. In a biological computer, the neurons could at any time fail. Okay, a neuron can fail to fire. It can fire when it's not supposed to. A bunch of them can do it at a time, and a person can have a seizure, and a person can do that and have a seizure and be completely conscious and functioning even through that. So there has to be processes in a biological system that don't exist in a purely physical, mechanical system that involve having multiple pathways. You have to have multiple routes for every piece of information. In a hardware system, you don't have to have that. You can put in a system variable into your, you can set a system variable to a path, to an exe, an executable file, and then you could type the command into the terminal, and it will always work. It will never stop working because, unless you go and delete one of the folders, but that's a manual thing that you would have to do. It's never going to suddenly be deleted on its own. Not unless you get a virus or something, right? So, computers can get sick just like people can, and it does similar things. And the illnesses function in similar ways. In fact, lately I've been in writing articles and doing work in the big data area, and a lot of processing and MapReduce functions work exactly like human language. Okay, so for instance, in languages that have gender and use L and la or le and la, those gendered words are gendered because it made it easier for them to have large numbers of vocabulary words and still quickly find the word they're looking for. It's a MapReduce function, okay, built into the human consciousness. That's what language is. Language is there as a tool, as a processing tool, in order for your subconscious mind to convert its matter. It's a stream, really. It's a stream writer that converts subconsciousness into consciousness. Okay, that's what language is. It's your stream writer. It's your output. And so humans and biological machines work a lot like electronic machines, but they have to do things and spend memory on things that hard physical machines don't, right? So, for instance, lately I've been looking at the size of the brain is larger when people have more physical intelligence because it requires more memory, it requires more space to store larger movements versus smaller ones. And so
and by physical intelligence, you just mean your body's ability to coordinate physical movement. You don't mean like...
Yes, I mean coordination and what's called sapiospatial intelligence, knowing where your body is in space and how to move your body through space in deliberate ways is sapiospatial intelligence. That's one of the physical intelligences. I think there's another one, kinesthetic intelligence, knowing how to do things with your hand, learning with your hands on, getting hands on in order to learn. That is a intelligence. There's actually 9 intelligences and 2 of them are physical.
Gotcha. So that you're working with those kind of Howard Gardner definitions, I guess, or...
Something, I don't know the origination. I just read it in a psychology textbook, a modern textbook.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah,
I think that's just Gardner. The accepted. Yeah, that's just been accepted these days that there's 9 intelligences. Yeah. So anyway, people that have high physical IQs often have larger heads, okay, because they have to store a greater number, literally a larger amount of information in order to maintain their physical intelligence. And Ogun's head is ginormous, and he was literally a professional athlete. Go look at footballers and go look at people that have very high physical intelligences. Many of them have larger heads. People that are very intellectually intelligent, many of them have smaller heads. Obviously, it's not a perfect thing because people can have lots of different intelligences, and you can start with one but then train another one and kind of convert the one intelligence into another, right? So it's not like a perfect system, but you'll see that I think that generally speaking, people that have more physical intelligence need to have more space to store that physical intelligence. And I also think it's why our children are speaking so late. Gal is over 3 years old, and she can do so many amazing things for a 3-year-old. She can go in the kitchen, open the fridge, get out her snack, open the drawer, get out her silverware, bring it in here, open it, take care of herself completely, sit, eat it. When she's done, get a wipe herself up, put everything away where it belongs, clean up the floor. She is completely self-sufficient at 3 years old. Yesterday, we opened her advent calendar after Volya had gone to sleep. So we pull out the drawer with the 2 candies, one for her, one for her brother. She insisted that she would not eat it, even though I offered twice because he's already asleep and he's not going to know or care. But she was like, no, that's babes. That's babies. I'm going to unwrap it for him in the morning. It's his. Insisted, even though I gave her the chance 2 times to eat this candy that was for her brother. So by 3 years old, she is conscientious, kind, compassionate. She can take care of the animals. She often pretends to give them medicine or, pet their coat. She knows not to actually give them anything. 3 years old, right? She can't speak. She can't form full sentences. If I try to speak to her in Russian, she yells at me to stop. She hates it. She struggles with English. But you should see how she behaves at the playground. She's wearing 6-year-old clothing. 5 to 6-year-old. She goes to the playground and the older kids are like, why doesn't she talk? Is there something wrong with her? And I'm like, she's only 3. And they're like, what? Right? So she's physically huge, physically very smart, right? She's got her daddy's athleticism. And I think that the linguistic intelligence is there because I see her speaking cat, right? Speaking dog. She understands what her brother wants better than we do. I see her understanding situations in using intelligences that are not purely linguistic by using the neighboring intelligences, the social and the emotional. And that's how I interact with the world. That's what makes me an empath. So I see her empathy, and I know the linguistic intelligence will follow. But I think that's why it's taking so long for her to form the linguistic intelligence, because her brain is larger than most kids. Her body is larger. She has to wire her brain faster to be able to use her larger body in deliberate ways and not, kill herself because she's too big for her body. And that physical intelligence is the priority as long as her body is larger and more intelligent than other people's, because it has to be, or she is at risk of injuring herself, right? So it is like an evolutionary biological imperative that her body prioritize, her brain prioritize wiring itself, downloading the software, inventing the software really, in order to run the hardware that she possesses, which is more advanced than other people's. So, I am watching my kids develop as neurodivergent children, right? They have a lot of me in them, and and their daddy is arguably neurodivergent too. Very physically intelligent with ADHD and stuff like this, right? So I'm watching this perfect storm of neurodivergency in my children, and it's giving me this amazing window into the nature of intelligence. And I also can, I watched my cats develop from kittens, my dogs, many of them develop from puppies. I see this development across many species. And we have a wildlife refuge, so we watch all of the children species, the snakes and the birds, all of them, we watch them mature and we help keep the babies safe. That's what we do. And I get to see this window into the nature of intelligence and how it develops and what it really is. And it's very fascinating to me, and I'm very interested in it. So that's why I've gone on so much about it. But I actually lost track of the initial question. Did I answer it? I don't.
It's okay, me too.
You probably have like 10 more questions now, right? Because that's the nature of research. The more you look into it, the more you're like, whoa, I have no idea how much I don't know. And suddenly I'm like, I want to know everything. So, I mean, I think that in general, humanity does not have a good understanding of the nature of intelligence, and they don't want to admit how much we are just machines and how much we have in common with actual machines. I think people want to think that there's something about us that is inherently special and that we can't reproduce it. But I'm just like, the fact that we could recreate something that is as intelligent as us or more so is incredibly special. So that just proves it, right? I'm just like, why would you feel like that about this? It's exciting. I mean, imagine if humans did not have a need for oxygen or, like they could take energy from any source and survive more like plants do. I mean, to me, this is just evolution. Like, this is just advancement. Humanity is finally actually changing. And I think the thing that is powerful enough to drive this change is the internet. It's just a force that has never existed in the history of our species, of our planet, Well, maybe. I mean, there might be forms that are similar that involve pheromones or psychic, amongst insects or whatever. But for the most part, being able to know what another person is thinking at any moment of any day, no matter where you are in the world, has never existed before in the history of our solar system, for all we know. It is brand new. And that is a force that is powerful enough to drive the evolution of a species. And I think that's what's happening now. We're just shifting into the Aquarian age. We're shifting ages. We're seeing evolution happen right in front of us.
In a way, it's almost shifting us toward being more like a hive or something like that. Yeah.
I said that the other day. We were looking at the skyline of Philadelphia, and I'm just sitting there, and I turn to my husband, and I say, humans are just ants. We are a less evolved, larger version of ants. And anyone who says otherwise just doesn't understand that advanced species do not need language to communicate. They don't. And we will leave the need for language behind. It's why we're evolving away from language already. We're using pictograms again. So we went on this whole character arc into understanding language and learning how to map reduce, and we needed all of those tools. We needed language to be able to handle big data. Now that we can handle big data, we can go back to not needing language anymore. The language is there inside of us in the way we think, and we will always read and engage with each other through words, almost always for the rest of forever in some capacity or another. Lest we evolve past the need for map-reduce functionality because our hardware becomes so advanced that we can handle the processing without it. The language will be something that is a part of us in some capacity, but the nature of it will be less important. We won't be even speaking to each other as much eventually, just like cats. That's how species evolve. That's what evolution is. We can see more evolved species than us all over the place. Species that are millions and millions of years old, like fungus, which communicate entirely by putting their neurons into the world. They pass their little filaments out. They touch all the trees. They touch all the roots. They touch everything. They form this network of filaments that resemble neural cells and function like neural cells, and they are essentially just gigantic brains that interact with everyone through their own neurons by producing neurotransmitters and sending them to other species. They just manipulate them on a neurotransmitter level. So language has its role, but it's on the way out as humans become more evolved. We're talking about thousands of years from now, though. Thousands of years. The pictograms is just another phase. We're just going through another phase. We're going through a pictogram phase, and then we'll all lose track of what all the pictograms meant, and we'll all have to start over again and have another dark ages in 2,500 years. Or something.
What do you mean? What do you mean by pictogram phase?
Emojis! Pictograph. Welcome to the land of the modern, what are they called? Not runes. They are called runes also, but I was thinking of hieroglyphics. We have come full circle. We have come full circle. And that is the nature of all things. Ebb and flow, up and down, circling around. That is how all things for all time have always interacted. Such is the way. Such is life.
I think we are living in extraordinary times, and it's really special to be a part of this evolution that we're having as humans. And I don't know if the end is near or far, but it's definitely changing, and I am just pleased to be a part of that in this generation, and feel like maybe that's part of the reason that I'm here this time around, is to be a part of this human evolution and push us to something better and bigger, because we can do better, and we have to do better. But I think that's our mission here, and I feel like that's our calling, is to save it, because we just cannot continue the way that it's going, and it's up to us. You know, we're grown-ups now, and it's up to our generation to turn this thing around.
I think that Generation Z will save us. I think that the Centennials are a really good group of kids who are all slowly but surely becoming adults. And I think most of them have really good heads on their shoulders and are more independent than people think they are. And they're definitely more informed. And I think it's just they are the first generation who grew up with the internet. My kids right now, Generation Alpha, Gala had a tablet when she had a phone when she was 9 months old. She had a tablet when she was 2. Volya is getting his first tablet probably here for Christmas. Santa has a whole tablet factory and brings all the kids tablets these days. Everyone's got a tablet. So they grow up with it. They grow up exposed to the collective consciousness all the time in everything they do. How can you be exposed to that all the time in everything you do and not have empathy and have,
I agree.
that hive compatibility, that you brought up, Alden's. So absolutely, I have faith in the younger generations to carry us into the future, and I think a lot of people want to hate on them, and I just think that they're a good group of kids, and I look forward to seeing some of them enter the political sphere. These kids are fearless, okay? They're going to be 25, 27 years old running for office. Wait till you see it, because they are fearless, and they believe in themselves, and they believe in what is good. And doing right by everyone, because they grew up seeing everyone all the time.
And I see this in my daughter. She's a Capricorn. She was born the day after Christmas, the 26th, and she wants to be president, and she's serious. And I think she could do it. I mean, she's well-spoken, she's intelligent, she's pure of heart and soul, and if anybody could be a good president, I think she could. And maybe by the time she's grown up, the world will be ready for it. Because I think last time we tried to have a female president and we just weren't ready. I mean, I was.
There's too many problems with that particular woman, unfortunately, I think. But I think there's going to be a few contenders coming to run in 2024, and we'll just see what happens.
Going back to, and maybe that is our purpose as mothers and fathers in our generation, is, I mean, I don't let my kids watch YouTube because it's a black hole that sucks them in, and I don't know where they're going or what's going to come out on the other end. So that one I don't let them watch. And, you were talking about, we do have to kind of know what our kids are watching and participate in what they're watching. I really do. And I think that that's a struggle that our parents didn't have.
My parents are like, I can't believe you let them have a tablet. And I'm like, what are you, like, if you grew up in a time where you could stop your children from screaming their faces off in the 10-minute drive to the grocery store and back by playing a Bluey episode on a screen in front of them, you definitely would have done that.
Yeah, they would have. It's a very fine balance that we don't have any precedent for. How long do you let them do it? What types of things do you expose them to? It's got to be controlled, or it just, like I said, it just sucks them into this black hole of craziness.
That is a very astute thing, because the truth of it is that if this is the first, this is the start of the end of an age, okay, because of the rise of the internet and the rise of the information age to come, then we are really like the first generation of parents to raise children in the information age, raised with the internet everywhere around them all the time in their lives. That's the first time in history any parent has ever had a child raised with that level of connectedness to the collective consciousness. That is a very good point.
Agreed.
I mean, when I was young, I was a latchkey kid. I'd come home, let myself in, make myself something to eat, and turn on the TV, but there were just a few channels. And then as soon as my parents would come, they would turn that on to the news, and then we would be watching the news source, from one channel of news. Yeah, it's just a completely different world.
Our kids are gonna watch Superman and see the phone booth, and it'd be like, "The fuck is that? Why do they just have public phones out in the streets?" They're just not gonna understand the concept of payphones at all.
I think that our kids will understand the concept of it because we watch a lot of older television, And we don't have a phone in our house, but Grandma and Grandpa have a phone in their house. So they are still in the era of experiencing home phones, but their kids definitely will have no framework to understand it. So our grandchildren one day will watch these old movies and be like, is that really what it was like, Grandpa? So for me, it's just fun to watch things go into obscurity and be like, haha, I lived through that. I'm old.
Where were you the day the Scranton Strangler drove by?
Exactly.
Oh, kid, take this and go buy yourself a spaceship.
Hey kids, Ogun's passing through, so here's your memes.
Yep.
This video is sponsored by memes. No, we don't do sponsorships. Everyone on YouTube does sponsorships.
No, but we'll pretend like we're everybody else, but then
Today is sponsored by the letter A.
Right, instead of sponsored, we'll do letter of the day.
Today is sponsored by the meme.
Wait. What about, well, we actually do that, but instead of letter of the day, we do like a rune of the day, or like something like that. We actually like...
You want to educate people in this podcast? I'm offended.
Okay.
This podcast is for talking about things that other people should have already known.
Get back to memes and shit. Like that.
This stuff when you get into the podcast, and you're an idiot. Okay, so we hope that you guys enjoyed our reflections this podcast. And for those of you still watching, thanks for joining us. Blessed be.